Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with Steve Schwartz, who is the Vice President of Strategy and Insurance for a company called Cytegic. Hello, Steve. How are you?
Hey, Ed. How's it going?
Welcome to New York. I know you travel a lot, but you don't live too far from here.
No, I don't. It's refreshing when I do get to stay.
Good. It's good to see you. Now, we'll get into some issues in around insurance and risk and so on. But briefly, tell us what Cytegic does.
Yeah, so Cytegic is immensely focused on the highly challenging task of cyber risk quantification. Right?
Emphasis on highly challenging. Right?
Yes. Right. How do we put a dollar sign next to what cyber risk means?
Yeah.
Right. Both at the individual entity level and aggregated up at the portfolio level. If you are an insurance company managing a portfolio, or an enterprise managing their ecosystem of third-party vendors, fourth party. So really, the core of everything that we do is focused around that quantification aspect, and this sort of sits fundamental to how we're able to drive, sort of compliance with regulatory requirements, and how to optimize security budgets between investing in security controls versus investing in cyber insurance, and it sort of comes back to that central focus.
Now, I've been aware of your firm for a while. I've been good friends with Alon, the CEO, and you guys more recently have really gotten into cyber insurance and into the insurance market in general. Supporting that industry. Tell us a little bit about that. It seemed like a good match for you guys.
Yeah, it's it was right around the time when I joined the company, and I have a background in insurance.
That's about a year ago.
Yeah. And it's funny. Nobody or I don't know if any company really wants to go into insurance. I'm kind of worried about the 7-year-old that does. But it's, the timing of the market in insurance specifically, there's a huge struggle in, trying to understand what is the exposure. Both as a company going through the application process, right? How do I know that I need this much insurance if it's not just a vendor, contractual requirement? And as the insurance company, right, who has to manage their capital. And it's, cyber insurance is growing immensely, right? I think premium last year was $4.5 billion, projected to be $7.5 billion next year.
Wow, that's double.
And upwards of 20 million by 2022, 24. So it's a huge opportunity and quickly growing. However, it's been a lot of the industry, it's been sort of an arms race for market share, right? Putting out coverage and not understanding what's the actual risk, that they're taking on. So as sort of the market has started to mature in the last year and a half, and still has a ways to go, Cytegic sort of saw it was a natural alignment with what we were doing, focused on cyber risk quantification, and sort of how it just mirrored up pretty seamlessly from a process perspective, as well as what the insurance industry needed to understand, how to operate in this environment.
Is the problem that there's no equation that's sort of validated by years of data on, all right, you are a bank, here's what your network looks like, boom, this is what the premium coverage is. Is that the problem? It's just kind of immature?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the problems, right, is a lack of that historical data. I think too, it's right when we look at how dynamic cyber risk is, right? It's changing every day, and it's if we sort of come back to just the fundamentals of how we understand, right, how we define cyber risk, just that process of identifying, what are the business assets that an organization has, right, and thinking about those assets that might not be just top of mind for everybody, like your employee database, intellectual property, availability to clients and vendors, those digital and intangible assets, and then correlating that with that relevant threat landscape, right? Who are those bad actors with a specific objective, using a variety of methods, social engineering, ransomware, et cetera, to compromise any one of those business assets, right? So how do we correlate the two in a very quick and seamless process, and in an environment that's adapting and changing every single day, right? So really, when we look at just the lack of historical data and the dynamic nature of just the changing regulatory environment, as well as the sort of risk landscape, if you will, it makes for a beast, if you will, in trying to understand
Let's
it.
talk about the platform. So
Yeah.
you guys sit, in some senses, a front end, if I understand correctly, in kind of the registration process. So I'm Acme Manufacturing, I'm going to buy from some insurance company. You guys would be right there collecting data. If I got that right, tell me how that works.
Yeah, so there's really a few different flavors of it, but we're really at its core sitting as the operating system for an insurance company's underwriting team, right? So, and as part of the underwriting process, a company who wants to get cyber insurance has to complete an application. So, right now and traditionally, it's done via paper-based application, which is just not a fun process for the underwriters that need to do the manual data entry, from that piece of paper, but also for the insureds, as it's more technical in nature and just isn't friendly. So displacing those paper-based applications, so that, to your point, sitting at the front end as that platform or engagement mechanism for that insured entity or prospect, and having that seamless data architecture from that assessment through to the underwriters who are now, managing the risk and correlating it to premium limits, et cetera. So really sitting at the foundation of really the operations for these cyber insurance companies.
Are companies answering like 5 questions, 50 questions, 1,000 questions? What's the experience like? And how long would it take to go through something like that?
It's actually, the question's very interesting, because when you look outside of just Cytegic for a second as to what the market has done in the last couple of years, sort of in this arms race for market share, there's been a few, carriers who might ask 4 questions. What's your revenue, number of records, and have you had a claim in the last 5 years, and put out a quote based on that. I think we all know that gives no insights into the actual risk there. So as the market is waking up to that, so with respects
you
to...
can be sure the premiums are going to be pretty high there, right? And the payout's going to be low. Right?
We could spend a couple hours just on some of the interesting nuances of the insurance industry. But from Cytegic's perspective, right, so if it's an SMB, it might be 15 questions, right? And the key too is that they're not technical questions. Although we're correlating it back, right, to 51 security controls, it's designed, our questionnaires have a lot of psychology behind them, and designed so that if you've graduated high school, you should very easily understand what we're asking.
I see. It reminds me a little bit of PCI. Is it a comparable sort of thing?
Yeah, it's PCI is a bit more in depth, right? Certainly in terms of those self-assessment questionnaires and whatnot, but sitting on the back end of our platform is the ability to dynamically map a given client's risk through a variety of security standards and frameworks, PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, et cetera. So as a company starts to engage with Cytegic, it's sort of a natural progression in taking that next step, that deeper assessment, if you will, and aligning with a variety of those standards. And one of the interesting projects we're doing right now, actually, which is sort of focused on this, with Plug and Play, right? Huge accelerator, a ton of corporate sponsors. The one metric of success for all of them is pilots, right? How many pilots can we get during this cohort? The biggest hindrance to getting the pilot successfully launched is the security due diligence, right? Which is slowing it down by a month, almost up to 2 months. So if we can have sort of Cytegic, they're looking at to be the standard for every startup going forward.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Right, where now we start to work on, what are those incremental changes over the next year that we could do to enhance our cyber maturity, and move away from sort of that isolated transactional, complicated Excel document.
That is very cool. So the $64,000 question everybody thinks is, do I get a discount if I'm doing good cybersecurity? The answer used to be no, but is that changing? Can you get a better deal if you do security right?
I think what we're seeing right now is certainly upfront, right? So if we had 2 companies come through and take a Cytegic's assessment with a carrier, and one had a cyber risk of 5 and the other had a cyber risk of 3, that company at a 3 is
5 better than 3.
3 being better than 5.
3 better than 5.
That company with a 3 is there's a very good chance they're going to get a lower premium.
Really?
And seeing the market adapt to that. the conversations that we're having now are, right, how do we get the insured to take a periodic assessment, right, a quarterly assessment, and maybe it's a bit lighter than the actual application, but how can we leverage some incentive related to premium or coverage so that we are able to engage them on a quarterly basis, build a stronger relationship, but really work with the insured in understanding their risk, and advising them.
Let me ask a question, and this may have nothing to do with anything, but it's on my mind. If a company is very cloud heavy, is that generally a better thing, worse thing, or kind of neutral in terms of the scoring that you guys give? Because in the past, we would have said, oh, cloud, high risk. I'm sensing that may be changing. Where do you guys come out on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And we can spend a lot of time on this topic for sure. I think it sort of depends, right? Generally speaking, to your point, we've all had to adapt to just cloud infrastructures and the efficiencies that comes with it. Sort of embedded in what we're in our assessment process are a variety of different validation mechanisms. Some which are purely external and trying to identify, right, who are some of those cloud providers you're working with and the standards along same. I think the market is generally is sort of aware of just the interconnected ecosystem we all operate within now, and don't look at cloud risk as an exponentially higher risk or whatnot.
Or like an inherent thing,
right?
Like you can
it's part of doing
cloud
business
poorly,
right?
So if you had two companies that are exactly the same company. And one runs its own Exchange servers and runs its email locally. The other uses Office 365 in the cloud, Exchange, all that stuff cloud. I'm guessing it probably wouldn't matter. You'd need more information because either could be better or worse. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
That's progress.
Yeah. And
I remember when that was not the case.
And I would say in some cases, depending on the profile of that organization, right? If it's a relatively small SMB that isn't that sophisticated but has that on-prem server and Exchange 2007 or whatnot, that's going to be a higher risk.
That's a negative. I'm glad you said that. We see that all the time in Tag Cyber. We see SMBs a lot of times with legacy infrastructure they put in place a long time ago, and a stubborn founder who says, nope, we're good. I like my data center. And you end up with higher risk. That's interesting. So, hey, where's all this going? What do you see in the future? What are the next big things to look for, both in insurance and also in risk assessment, which you guys, risk quantification is a big part of what you guys do.
Yeah, I think it's, I think as we've started to move away from just point security solutions into a more integrated risk management solution, right? Sort of that combination of security and insurance or risk mitigation or risk transfer, and really driving towards resilience, right? How do we respond when we have a bad day, right? Both as an individual entity, but as an ecosystem, right? As we all, to our point earlier, we're all in some degree dependent upon those connections that we have with our external service providers or companies. And when that cyber 9/11 event does come.
You're saying it when, not if.
Yeah. Right. How are we going to make sure that we're in a position to respond effectively, right? So that an insurance carrier doesn't get blown out of the water, right, for covering 50,000 insureds on some huge exposure, and all of those entities themselves are in a position, right? They've gone through and they've done just the basic tabletop exercises, for incident response, right? And I think as from Cytegic's point of view, the more that we can help the world to understand this risk, right, and by translating it into dollars, something that we all can digest, the more we're going to be able to sort of bring everybody together in achieving that. So I think it's, as I went in that rabbit hole there, I really think we're going to see a lot of what traditionally was isolated, in terms of different roles in the value chain, really start to come together in some capacity. And certainly from insurance, I think the opportunity is for those companies that do underwrite effectively with the right protocols in place, and really to provide their insureds with the value-added services that they're looking for, and the advice that they need. Really provides a unique opportunity to set them up for success.
Well, that's a very optimistic point, Steve. I think probably a good,
we get
good note to close on, and close on a nice, high, optimistic point. Looks like you're having fun with the company, and I'm really glad things are going so well for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. It's should have some exciting news forthcoming.
That's good. We'll watch for it. You come visit us, anytime at all. Maybe we'll see you at the RSA 2020 show.
Yes, sir.
Come by and tell us about any news that's coming up before, during, or after.
That works. We'll do.
Great. Thanks for stopping by our
Thanks, Ed.
studio. Nice to see you. And we'll see you next time.